Those of you who watch these videos one after another will undoubtedly have already found out that these 3-part videos of the applications of mediumship, evidential mediumship, follow a common pattern. The outer, the inner, and the secret aspect of a subject. I already talked about the outer and the inner, the publicly known and available options, and the inner personal journey, which both aspects are inevitably part of everyone's journey. Because you always have to do something, and you always have a personal experience. The personal experience, and as well as the outer layer, the immediate action in the community, have a spiritual component which can be cultivated to a certain degree or to a less degree. If you are inclined to cultivate that spiritual component to a higher degree, you might enter the space of the esoteric possibilities of evidential mediumship. This is a space that is naturally open to only a few. The ones that have it in themselves to enter higher realms and expressions of consciousness. It is something they are basically born with. Per definition, esoteric means hidden, secret. And the secrecy is not about what can be taught or talked about, is simply what can be comprehended. It must be lived to be comprehended. It is about the spiritual power that is behind each and every expression of life that wishes to express itself, in this case, through a human being, maybe even you. But given the nature of the dwelling place of the spiritual power, it is not something that is or can be done in the open. It cannot be done amongst the everyday consciousness of humanity, because it is something beyond, and it wants and has to be expressed beyond. It is about entering access to that power and then becoming part of it. It's a radical change of consciousness, of life, of lifestyle, of being. It is about acting and living in realms way beyond what normally is perceived as the spirit world. Because in evidential mediumship, we enter into communication, but we never enter into the spirit world. In our astral journeys, we do that a little bit more, but we still are limited according to the development of our consciousness. The higher we develop, the deeper we change inside ourselves, the more our vibrational energy is raised and raised and raised, the more the spiritual power is able to give us a hug, a kiss, and sooner or later we will enter into a loving union. There are different ways to do so, but they all end at a new start, which is communion and union leading to a contribution on the ongoing life expressions and mutual support in higher realms, which naturally will, should, and have strong effects on the individual, the community, and humanity in total. How do we get there through evidential mediumship? Again, evidential mediumship is the outer aspect of our practice. The inner aspect is the personal development that should turn into a spiritual development that can lead us to an esoteric practice. Because evidential mediumship is the one unique action that brings us into direct contact with the next level of our life, the incarnated soul space. Communicating with the soul space in the next level, which we do not call incarnated, but the difference is not so big, especially in the beginning after the passing. The incarnated soul is a part of the higher soul or the higher self, wishing to be a human, and the spirit world where we go is simply an next step. It is not a new life. It is the next step of the human being. One of the big misunderstandings is that this life is one life and the spirit life is another life. No, that's not the case. It's the same expression as a human being. Later there will be different kind of lives, when the human being is so transformed that it can hardly be called human being anymore. But maybe from that point of view, it also is all the same, because probably actually it is. So when we practice evidential mediumship, we use the connection to ourselves as incarnated soul. And that is the next step, always on any spiritual journey. The incarnated soul has a vast amount of transformational power, energy, and above all, love, that wishes to guide us higher and higher. And if we learn to use our connection as an evidential medium and transform it into a connection for spiritual personal progress, we will become more and more soul. Our identification focus changes from the many different dispersed and fragmented identities. I'm here, I'm this and this and this and this. Today I'm happy, tomorrow I'm sad, in the morning I was tired, in the evening I was even more tired. No. Our identification through the constant merging with our incarnated soul on a conscious level shifts towards an opening that is also constantly happening, more and more and more. And this opening will then encompass everything that we are, and it is like a light that shines onto all these fragmented identification points, unites them and integrates them in our being as soul. Once we have achieved this to a sufficient high degree, because it comes, it goes, it comes, it goes. It's not like you have it one day, no. You have to work upon it years and years. Once we have settled into the space of the incarnated soul, we will understand some of the experiences we had already prior and enter into communion with the higher soul, which is the origin of the incarnated soul. On this pathway, we meet many friends. The first friends that we meet are our fellow mediums, our companions on our journey. They support us on the outer path. On the inner path, we meet our spirit guides, which usually should appear in a human form. Every other form, in my personal opinion, is not acceptable, because it is a level of work and of collaboration very much geared to the human life and its spiritual development. Our spirit guides have a thorough understanding of life, and much more important, they have a thorough understanding of us as individuals, because we were united as a group prior to the incarnation of the one member who takes it on herself to descend into the body. And then the group, the team, many people say, is developing together on a human level. This dimension and the spirit world, it is one. It is the human level. Our spirit guides are a power in themselves the more we connect to them, the more we blend with them, the more we see and, more importantly, hear them, the more empowered will our personality become. Because prior to becoming identified as a soul, as an incarnated soul, our personality, our life, must be entirely spiritualized, full of light, full of harmony within the disharmony. We achieve that through the right actions and the collaboration with our spirit guides. They help us, they guide us, they support us, but they cannot alleviate our work. We have to do it ourselves. That is a very classical aspect of spiritual development. Many traditions are engaged in that, are mentioning that. It's nothing new. But we live it in our modern Western experience, in our way, of course. It's culturally conditioned, the perception, but that's only the perception. Behind that is the reality, and the reality is always the development of the soul. Because that is what human life is, soul development. Once the personality is developed, a certain degree of identification as a soul has been achieved, things change radically. Because we meet new friends on a higher level, the soul level. Then we come into contact with what we perceive as higher beings. And they do, can, and will alleviate our burden. Because that higher power that we will be able to cultivate in our heart, in our energy and our life, our consciousness, our expression, our being, that higher power will be so extremely supportive that it is not possible to imagine or to convey in any way if you haven't experienced it yourself. It goes way beyond healing. It goes way beyond love. It is an integration in the soul stream that generates a joy and a complete trust in life, because you are finally living according to the precepts of the souls. Your incarnated soul works, lives, and is in harmony with the soul space, the soul level, the expression and life of the souls. And you come into that. Once that has become the beauty and the endless joy You will act on higher dimensions, higher levels, and contribute to the raising and support of many souls in many dwelling places and many dimensions, including the human ones. We do a lot there. And it's a constant experience of constant expansion and constant being welcomed by always higher, always more beautiful, and always more powerful beings that are taking us by the hand and guiding us into the right situation where we can act. These esoteric practices have nothing to do with the lower needs of the person. We don't wish to liberate us or anybody else. We don't even want to heal us or anybody else. We surrender totally into the stream of light, into the inner core of the movement, completely trusting that our life, our contribution, and our action is at the right time, at the right space, and is integrated in a way that can only be beneficial. Because entering that dimensions is only beneficial. Everything there is beneficial. And you understand why the human being has free will to do all these things. Because the effects of all these things that we call suffering are transformed in an instant and have no life beyond the short-lived space in which they are created. But the light and the ever-growing love of the soul as a human and beyond is part of eternity, shines, grows, and lives forever. That is the inner message, as far as I can see, of each life, and we can understand that much better when we tune into the soul space and expression in our evidential links. To achieve esoteric understanding needs a lot of practice, different methods, and a lot of dedication. So, if you have time and you want to, just sit with me for a while.